Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of York, the 26th largest Rotary Club in the world, and a club dedicated to imagining and carrying out the Rotary mission of service above self. I'm Glenn Miller, the club president for 4 more weeks. Our opening song today, My Country 'Tis of Thee, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Steve Feldman. Our invocation will be led by Kelly Gibson, and our visitors and visiting Rotarians will be introduced by J.T. Hand. Please take a moment to silence your electronic devices.
Rotarians, please join me. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please prepare yourself for prayer in the manner in which you are accustomed. Water not only gives us life, it is the origin of life. Our relationship with water goes beyond the survival of our body. It is spiritual. Water does not know or identify with any race, culture, ethnicity, or religion. It is essential to us all. In the Judeo-Christian Bible, we find the symbolic power of water and the intensity with which people live in relation with it. The word water appears 582 times in the Old Testament, and it is used to describe creation and destruction, purification, regeneration, and love. In the Quranic texts of Islam, water is donated by God for the creation and maintenance of life. God is the one who has given you the earth as a bed and who has built the heavens as a building over your heads. He is the one who brings down water from heaven and who germinates it with the fruits destined to nourish us. For Hinduism, water is the essential substance from which all forms are born. There are constant references to water as a metaphor of purity and authentic wisdom. As pure water poured into pure water remains unchanged, so is the ego of an illuminated thinker. We give thanks for the illuminated thinking and wisdom of today's speaker, Justin Ladner, president of PA American Water, who stewards this precious resource for 2.4 million people. Let us also thank the water and hands that made the meal we share today in fellowship. All this we pray. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. So guests, when I call your name, if you wouldn't mind, please stand. And if you wouldn't mind, remain standing until President Glenn has welcomed you. We do not have any visiting Rotarians today. Our guests of the club, David Meisner, guest of our speaker, Dave Bohr, also a guest of our speaker, Scott Armburst, also a guest of our speaker. Kelly Kelch is a guest of Steve Harlacher. Tony Reif is a guest of Jim Kell. Rebecca Countess, a guest of Frank Countess. Dan Hevner, also a guest of Frank Countess. And Del Houck, a guest of Andy Rawitz. President Glenn.
Thank you, JT. Friends, we are delighted to have you here with us today. I know that you will enjoy today's program, and I also trust that you've already been enjoying the lively fellowship of diverse community leaders that surround you at these tables. I hope you will return to us as a visitor and perhaps even consider returning as a member. Rotarians, please help me welcome our visitors today. You may be seated. Otherwise, we'll induct you as new members. Several announcements for the good of the order. It is getting close to the end of my presidency, and when that happens, you know, sometimes you feel a certain freedom, perhaps to do other things you wouldn't otherwise. So I've noticed this is the second week in a row that the front table has been empty. So next week, if that happens again, I'm going to do what I've done in the church already, which is tell the people in the back, everybody move up front. So note to selves, make sure that doesn't happen next week. I hope everyone enjoyed their Memorial Day weekend, and I hope that at some point during the weekend, we all took a few moments at least to remember why we have a 3-day weekend and those who gave the last full measure of devotion so that we might have all of the freedoms that we enjoy in this great nation. We also give thanks this day for yet another Rotarian who has recently been honored. We are on a roll. I have recently learned that Rotarian Ophelia Chambliss has received an honorary doctorate, Doctor Honoris Causa, as we say in academia, from the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design. Congratulations, Ophelia. And while we are giving thanks for things, I want to be thankful to God for the return of Rich Randall in full health to us today. Rich, where are you? Welcome back, brother. Glad to see you. In other important but more mundane news, the fundraising committee will meet on June the 7th at 11 a.m. in the terrace room here at CCY. And the Rotary Club of York Board of Directors will meet on June the 8th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. And now, Phil Woods has a brief presentation about something that we all know, but we can continue to learn about. Phil.
Thank you, President Glenn. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I'd like to start out with audience participation. Show of hands. Who knows the name Herbert J. Taylor? Herbert J. Taylor. Somebody pointed. Herbert J. Taylor was not only the president of Rotary International from 1954 to 1955, but more importantly, in 1932, Mr. Taylor created the four-way test. Four-way test over on the screen. You can obviously see all its tenets. It was initially created in 1932 to help revive, at that time, a failing cookware company called Club Aluminum Company. And the four-way test was initially created to set apart that organization from its competitors. Mr. Taylor wanted to create a test and a culture, essentially a goal to build character, dependability, and of course, service-mindedness amongst its personnel. It wasn't until 1943 that this test, as we know it, the four-way test, was adopted by Rotary International. So this year, 2023, we get to celebrate 80 years of its existence with us. See, I forget my timer. Lynn told me I have 5 minutes or 4 minutes. But with that, this is what reminded me. It started as a 100-word, not 25-word test, and there were 7 questions, not 4. So as Mr. Taylor whittled it down, the company gained more success, survived during that Great Depression time period, and it followed the business and professional lives of all personnel. It became the guide for sales, production, advertising, and all relations with dealers and customers. And the survival of the company is, of course, credited with this simple philosophy. So as fellow Rotarian Darrell Thompson from California wrote, any ethical system that calls for living the truth and measuring actions on the basis of benefits to others is demanding. The test calls for thoughtful examination of one's motives and goals. Just as Herbert Taylor placed this little test under the glass on his desk, he felt challenged by the test as he initially used it. At first, he was discouraged, and you may, as you employ this test in your own life, find it a little discouraging and hard, and that's okay. Though in the end, he claimed, we have found that you cannot constantly apply the four-way test to all your relations with others 8 hours each day in business without getting into the habit of doing it in your home, social, and community life. You thus become a better father, and I'll add a better parent, better mother, better mentor, better guardian, a better friend, and a better citizen. Darrell Thompson added, few things are needed more in our society than moral integrity. The four-way test will guide those who dare to use it for worthy objectives, not only choosing, winning, and keeping friends, getting along well with others. We could all benefit from this, ensuring a happy home life, developing high ethical and moral standards, becoming successful in a chosen business or profession, and becoming a better citizen and a better example for the next generation. So I ask all of us today and moving forward to celebrate 80 years of the adoption of the four-way test in the Rotary International. Herbert J. Taylor was the man who created it. And I ask you to continue to adopt this test in your own lives in all aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, and I'm just going to keep your phone in case anything interesting comes through. I'll pass the messages along, don't worry.
It was a farce anyway. I didn't even set the timer.
No, you didn't. But I had the cane, don't worry. Thank you all kidding aside. Thank you so much, Phil. I think we all know in our faith life, in our businesses, in other arenas of life, if we have things like this, but we don't pay attention to them, don't revisit them regularly, they just become words sitting on a shelf. So thanks for pulling these off the shelf for us, particularly in this 80th year of its existence in Rotary. That was a great history for us and a great thing to remember. And now Debbie Ashway has a presentation from the Student Education Committee. Debbie.
It is my pleasure to report on the success of our 2023 York Rotary scholarships. So the stats are, we've received 451 applications, which is more than we've ever received. 22 scholarships were awarded and $41,100 were awarded. The scholarships were awarded to students from 13 different high schools: Central High School, Dallastown, Dover, Hanover, Kennerdale, Logos Academy, Northern York, Redland, Red Lion, Southwestern, Spring Grove, William Penn, and York Suburban. And the students that receive the awards will attend 14 different colleges, including Hack, Penn State York, and York College. And I want to thank the Student Education Committee for every one of you that have reached out to the local high schools to make them aware of the opportunities and encourage them to fill out the applications. And also thanking the committee members that attended the local high school award ceremonies to promote our scholarship awards. I'd also like to thank all of our Rotary members that have so generously contributed to make those scholarships possible, particularly Rotarians Fred Rosenmiller and Carol Wagman, who have established funds during their lifetime that will continue to help students now and in the future. In July, we're actually going to bring the students to you and acknowledge them and the awards, so you'll get to meet them in July.
This is another year of just tremendous success from this committee. I want to commend the committee for their great work, and in particular for their vision in recognizing that a few years ago we needed to make a shift in how we were getting this done. And I think it's utterly remarkable that we've gone from not that long ago when we were begging people to get the word out about these scholarship opportunities to 451 applications from school districts all across the county. What that's doing for the students that are being served and what that's doing to broaden the scope and the reach of Rotary in the community is really just astounding. So thank you to the committee for all of that. Really, really well done. Thank you. And now, without further ado, Steve Harlocker will introduce our speaker and our program for the day. Steve.
Thank you, President Glenn. And good afternoon. For today's program, I'm happy to introduce Justin Ladner. Justin is the president of Pennsylvania American Water, a subsidiary of American Water. Pennsylvania American Water is the largest investor-owned water utility in the state, providing high quality and reliable water and wastewater services to approximately 2.4 million people. In his role as president, Justin reinforces and strengthens customers, regulatory, and local government relationships, drives the company's operational and financial results, and leads the company in providing safe, clean, affordable, and reliable water services to help keep customers' lives flowing. Justin received his law degree cum laude from the University of Alabama School of Law, as well as a master's and a bachelor's degree in metallurgical and materials engineering with honors from the University of Alabama. He is married and has 2 daughters. As many of you know, PA American Water has become a community partner with a number of York County municipalities in the past several years. Today, Justin will provide an overview of the company and its recent acquisition of the York City wastewater system and discuss infrastructure improvements being made. He will also cover aspects of the company's community outreach and customer assistance programming. Justin will be joined today by several of his colleagues: David Meisner, External Affairs Manager, Dave Bohr, Operations Manager, and Scott Ambrose, Senior Project Engineer. Please join me in welcoming Justin Ladner.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, President Glenn, for the opportunity to be here. What a tremendous membership here, and reading a little bit about the history of the York Rotary. It's quite impressive, and being here in person, I can see why. And I enjoyed the four-part test. You know, reminded me of a quote from John Wooden: "How you do anything is how you do everything." And it's just that personal North Star. So I've already learned quite a bit just from the few minutes I've been here. So Steve did a great job introducing kind of the content I want to cover. I'm a little bit new to Pennsylvania. I've been in this role going on 6 months now. This is one of my first external speaking appearances, and I can't think of a better place to do it, to talk about this new partnership that, again, Steve mentioned. I'm going to give a quick background on American Water, who we are, talk about PA American Water, and then go into some of the infrastructure needs that are present in this state between water and wastewater. And you know, JT Hand here from the York Water Company, he's seen some of this content before because he lives and breathes it every day. You know, we're the wastewater provider, and his team is making sure that the water that you get here is clean, safe, and reliable. And we work together because we have a lot of the same customers. And then I'm going to go into some specifics around the York wastewater system, the acquisition. We're coming up on a year now. Last week, as a matter of fact, we celebrated, and some of the improvements we've made. Everybody's heard about our team, the visiting members that are here. Got our head of engineering and Scott, head of operations and Dave, and external with David. We're going to talk about the community engagement. It's very important that we are citizens where we serve, and the same mission of Rotary, American Water, and PA American specifically, we share that. We have an aligned interest, and we're going to talk about how we do get engaged in the communities where we serve. And then I'm going to conclude talking about some customer assistance programs. The infrastructure need for water and wastewater improvements is significant. And with that comes affordability challenges. Everybody's facing them. So I want to make sure that everybody in this room is aware of some of the proactive customer assistance programs that are out there to help customers that need it the most. So quickly, and I'm going to try and keep moving here. I know I got 20 minutes, and then want to make sure we do some vibrant Q&A afterward. American Water, it's the largest investor-owned water wastewater provider in the country. This map just shows all the different locations we're in, but specifically Pennsylvania, that's the largest subsidiary. Steve mentioned 2.4 million customers. We're the biggest American Water company, and that's a tremendous responsibility that I've got, but one I don't take lightly, but it's also very exciting. across the entire American water footprint, treat about 1 billion gallons of water a day. And you can see all the different states that we're in, as well as a military focus. I know there's a large contingent in here, military. Appreciate your service. That's one of the things that American Water does is we partner with the federal government, Army, Navy, Air Force to operate their water and wastewater systems. So talking about PA specifically, this is our service territory here in the state. About 20% of the state's residents are served by Pennsylvania American Water. That amounts to around 680,000 water customers you can see on the bottom of the slide. But then specifically for York, we've got about 100,000 wastewater customers. And a significant contribution to that number is this community and the townships that we serve indirectly with our wastewater system. And you can see that the geographic diversity between the Poconos in the Northeast, the suburbs of Pittsburgh, as well as Philadelphia. And then of course, our focus in the central part of the state, and then down here, Central Southern and York. How do we do that? How do we serve all these different customers? Well, it takes a lot of facilities, a lot of assets, a couple of statistics, 37 water treatment plants, again, relevant to York, 25 wastewater treatment plants. So the York Regional Treatment Facility that we've got here is one of those 25, and I would argue a very critical one. You look at the number on the side there, 11,650 miles of water and sewer pipe. I think here in this York system, we've got about 100 miles. You start adding these things up and you stop and think about 1 mile of new main of water or sewer, this really adds up, and it's a significant challenge to maintain all these facilities. And that gets me to kind of that report card piece where the state of the water and sewer infrastructure within Pennsylvania is something that anytime I speak, it's incumbent upon me to really emphasize the challenges that are out there. And I think JT and others would agree, this is something that we can't say enough, meaning report card snapshot, if you will, the American Society of Civil Engineers, so a very objective body, they go through and they assess each state for their infrastructure. And then they break down that analysis into subcomponents, if you will. And water and wastewater are 2 subcomponents. And you can see that they're a D and D minus respectively. And nobody wants a failing grade. I certainly make sure that Pennsylvania American Water doesn't have grades like this. And I know other peers of mine and investor-owned utilities do the same. But they talk about some challenges when they did this report. You know, specifically some of the monetary needs, $10 billion of funding gap over 10 years for water, 10 billion. Wastewater, 8.5 billion. Talks about things such as adopt full cost pricing. And that's something that American Water, Pennsylvania American, is governed by with the Pennsylvania Utility Commission. That's how we do our rates. That's how we do our cost of service. We have to show what all it takes to provide clean, safe, reliable wastewater and water. And that in turn results in full cost pricing. But you can see on the right-hand side for wastewater, upgrade facilities, combined sewer overflows. There's a lot of consent decrees. These are challenges that not everybody's aware of. These things are underground sometimes. I kind of liken it to the dentist. If you don't proactively go to the dentist for checkups, there's going to be a time at some point down the road where that deferred maintenance, so to speak, is really going to cost you, meaning there's going to be some pain involved physically, probably. It's going to be uncomfortable. Then also monetarily, it's going to be expensive. And that's what we're trying to guard against, but we've got a long way to go. So an example of how we're trying to do that at Pennsylvania American, over the last 17 years, we've invested almost $5 billion in our water and sewer systems. 2022, this last data point, 490 million in 22. In 23, we'll probably eclipse $500 million, so 500 million. All again to try and make sure those failing grades don't exist and our customers aren't without service. So talking quickly about York. Okay, what I just shared was an overview of kind of the state of the infrastructure within the state of Pennsylvania. Now, some highlights around the wastewater acquisition. I mentioned earlier in my comments, we're coming up on the 1-year mark. So we closed the deal on May 27th of 2022. Very large deal for Pennsylvania American, the largest in our history, $235 million deal. 45,000 customer connections. Now that includes townships, kind of indirect customers that send their wastewater to York Regional Treatment Facility. 14,000 direct customers. Talking about rates, this last bullet. So when we closed the deal, there was an agreement for a 3-year rate freeze, which means that the rates for York are going to stay the same as they were when we closed for 3 more years post-close, which puts you to May 27th of 2025. What those rates will be at that time in 2025 are going to be dependent upon Pennsylvania American's last rate case proceeding and what our current rates are at that time. I keep mentioning how big of a facility this is. Well, when you put it in numbers, 26 million gallons per day, this facility can treat of wastewater. That's a lot of capacity. 2 process treatment trains, tertiary treatment, which I just think kind of three layers, if you will, with UV disinfectant. That translates to a lot of disinfectant. I mean, this water that's being discharged is really clean. I'm looking at Scott right now, and I know he's tasked with making sure we have all the proper treatment so that when it discharges and when we're held accountable to the Departmental Environmental Protection, DEP, that water is meeting the standards that we're required to comply with. On the right-hand side is the collection system. So that's kind of like the transmission, distribution. Talked a lot about the plant. That's the treatment. 7 municipalities, 1 lift station, which is fairly small in terms of number of lift stations, which is a good thing. That means it's fairly flat in terms of the topography. And then 100 miles I mentioned of collection system. That's a lot of pipe that we've got to make sure is maintained. Things like inflow and infiltration. That's where the integrity of those collection system pipes is no longer whole. And that's a problem. That means everything can get into it that's not supposed to. And then we have to treat all that additional material. And that's a challenge. Just goes to how critical the integrity is. 2,600 manholes, stop and think about that. And then just the different size of this piping that I'm talking about, 8 to 72 inches. So you say, well, what have you done, PA American? You know, we agreed as a community to go through this process. You made commitments. So what have you been doing? Well, we made it clear that at least $17 million was going to be committed to investment to upgrade and kind of continuously improve the York wastewater system. And just through this first year, we've already committed and executed on, I think, $4 million when I checked. And some of those things are improvements to the treatment trains, safety, physical security. I've got another slide on that. But bottom line, we hit the ground running. We identified what the most critical needs were for compliance, for safety. Our engineers had a plan. Our ops team worked well with our engineering team. And we said, okay, as soon as we've got the keys, we're going to start making these continuous improvements. And we've done that. And another component to that continuous improvement is this bottom piece right here, consent order with the EPA. This is very critical. These are commitments that we're making with the EPA to say, those projects that are going to make us more compliant, here's our roadmap to doing that in terms of what we're going to do and when we're going to do it by. And I'm proud to show that after just 1 year, 5 of those projects have been completed, 3 are nearing completion, and 2 are slated for the near future. So what are specifically some of those projects? And some of this may not be relevant to you in terms of some of the verbiage, but repairs to the digester. These are critical things that our team identified day one we really needed to get improved. And this helps us process the waste. Collection system projects. This is that inflow and infiltration, identified what areas of the system we needed to prioritize replacing that collection main. Security improvements. People ask me oftentimes, what are your biggest concerns? What keeps you up at night? Safety, compliance are the top two. And within that compliance piece, there's environmental components for sure, but there's also cybersecurity, physical security. And these are some changes that we've already made. Things like SCADA, which allow us to really understand the telemetry, if you will, what the equipment's doing, have greater oversight over it, as well as remote surveillance and operation. Some of these technology things that we were able to put in place quick in time. Bulk polymer, again, this is something to help with the treatment, ferric chloride installation, all in an effort to make sure that we're providing the treatment necessary to comply with our permit. And we're doing it in an efficient manner. That's another piece here. What efficiencies can we bring in with our significant scale? All the other wastewater operations that we've got around the state and around our enterprise, to be quite honest. What expertise can we bring to York that's applicable? Not every community is the same. None of the systems are the same, but there are synergies that we try and make sure and incorporate. And this first year has allowed us to do that. Something that comes up, and JT and I talk regularly because there's been confusion, understandably so, within the community on who provides their water, who provides their sewer, where do they pay the bill, things like that. Well, an important piece of us engaging and creating this community partnership is being physically present. And City Hall location, we're working with the city on kind of having a clerk set up there, and final installation is being made. In the meantime, for that location, we've had to kind of make some adjustments with local municipal leadership there to make sure it's a safe location, bulletproof glass, security badging, things like that. But we've got a kiosk in the meantime that we put in City Hall, so individuals can come pay their bill there. Also at local grocery stores, there's a lot of different methods to do that. But that's something where we're going to try and do a new communication in the next month or so with all the York customers, reiterating some of these changes and making sure they've, kind of an FAQ sheet here on if they've got questions or concerns, what numbers to call, things like that. So this is really important for this group. It's one thing to make sure we're compliant. These are important, but how are you getting engaged in the community? That's the mission of this organization. And that's something that we take very personal at American Water. In addition to being responsible for Pennsylvania American Water, I am on the American Water Charitable Foundation Board, which is our foundation group that provides support to all of the different subsidiaries within the enterprise. And that's something that I enjoy serving on personally, but I'm also able to influence focus around that group in Pennsylvania. And I know at the end of last year, David and I came down, and the Charitable Foundation made a significant contribution here to York around some of the park conservancy. But here's some of the buckets: environmental grants, firefighting. We're very big on that in terms of the fire departments. Those are partners for us. We know they need reliable service within their hydrants, of course. And also schools. I talked about my concerns that keep me up at night. Well, the third one is workforce. And I think a lot of you in this audience probably face the same. So it's important for us to get it out in our communities and educate young people on the needs in terms of water and wastewater service and job opportunities. We sponsor different events. We've got our little puddle ducks and things like that. So if you've got an event and a 5K run, things like that, and you're looking for some community sponsorship, please reach out to us. David Meisner is very active in this area and accessible. Let us know, and we'll do our best to try and participate. Environmental grants, I talked about that. 50 applications were received for the 23 program. Pennsylvania American received one of the governor's excellence awards for our environmental work around planting trees and just making sure that we're engaging in the communities that we serve. Really proud of that. 14 recipients, $75,000 in grants. And we like to make sure that we're spreading the grants around to a lot of the different communities. And we know that there are entities that can take smaller amounts and really do a lot of good work with it. And that's an accomplishment by our external affairs group. Not only money, okay, it's our team members volunteering in the communities where they work and serve. We do that regular basis. Our Mechanicsburg office is the picture here, 100+ local employees, in addition to our York treatment facility team members here. MLK Day of Service. We do Americans in Action. We've got a lot of different corporate sponsored opportunities that really give our team members a license to go out and support a group that they are passionate about. And one thing we do is we do a $50 grant to every team member in American Water each year for them to put towards a philanthropic initiative of their choosing. And that's something we just started a couple of years ago, and we've seen great feedback from that. Specifically, here are some of the things that David's really helped lead us with in terms of York Watershed Alliance, the York County Economic Alliance, Better York, Downtown York, York City Police. And you can see as part of the acquisition, we committed $50,000 of support. Since closing, we've honored 25,000 of that, and we'll continue to do this. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a honeymoon first year deal with us. It's every year. Okay, we're ingrained in the community. Our operations leaders are here. Our engineers are close by and come down. So it's not like it's a company that's up in Mechanicsburg with no local presence. But then customer assistance programs. This is really important. Again, scale helps us here. There are grants of up to $500 a year for customers if they need assistance. And that's a phone call to our team to talk about what the predicament is that they're in. We work with a third-party group, Dollar Energy, and if the criteria is met, they can receive up to $500 in assistance each year. And that can be, repeat years. But then something that I'm proud of, and we're still getting some feedback on, this is kind of wrapping up my comments. In our last rate case with the Pennsylvania Utility Commission, everybody's aware of the rising costs of service for water and wastewater. And we identified a need to create some customer assistance, low income tiers of service. And this is our first time going forth with 3 different tiers based on the criteria of the individual in need in terms of federal poverty level. So that's kind of the objective criteria, LIHEAP, things like that. And if they're in the most in need criteria, it's up to an 80% discount on the service. And that's volume, service, and fixed. And you can see there 30 to 80% discount. And then the numbers there for wastewater can mean a reduction of $42 up to $88. And the specifics of that are here. When I talked about these 3 different tiers and what the discount looks like. And again, that's by federal poverty level. So that's a criteria that many other utility sectors use, particularly the electric and gas with LIHEAP. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for these water customers to get some of that assistance that we've seen the energy providers use. And that concludes my comments. I know I was trying to go kind of fast, a lot of technical pieces there, but would love to engage in any questions from the audience. And I can't commit I'll be able to answer all of them, but those individuals that we introduced are here for a reason to help me out also. Yes, in the back. Okay, so it was a very good question, very technical. Was it the ratio? Are you trying to get at kind of York's contribution, the community of York's contribution to the treatment plan in terms of volume? Right. So that inflow and infiltration, kind of the integrity of the system, you're saying. Scott, you think you have the rough ballpark percentages on that? Yeah. And so to repeat the question for those virtually, basically, he's looking for the individual asking if we had 100% integrity of the system versus what we actually have after a year of really recording this. How much are we losing? How much additional are we having to treat because of kind of lack integrity of the system?
I haven't really looked at the numbers that much as that question is asking them on average daily flow with dry weather conditions, we're seeing approximately 10 million gallons a day coming in to the plant. Right now, with the city of York, with the 103 miles of collection system piping that we have, we're currently doing an investigation and we're doing structural analysis ratings of all 103 miles of that, so we can actually find where there are leaks and things like that. So that we can actually we use trenchless technology, and we actually line the collection system piping instead of digging and replacing, which is done quite often. So I'm just trying to come up with a good answer for you. I would say during wet weather flows, we can go up to 20, 30 million gallons a day coming into the plant. When we've had, Dave, when a couple weekends ago or a few weekends ago, when we had like 3 days of steady rainfall, we went up to about 30 million gallons a day for that. So with the inflow coming in, it kind of depends on a lot of different factors. It depends on the intensity of the storm and the duration of the storm. So you may have an inch of rain a day over a week, and you'll get a lot more water coming into the system that way. And that's any wastewater system, as compared to getting dumped on in one day and then the storm moves out. So dealing with inflow and infiltration, commonly referred to as I&I, it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole is the reference that they give, that you fix some areas, then you find out in other areas you kind of have it. And I'm not trying to dodge your question.
What I was hearing
So
is 30 and then 10. So if we've got, the rain, that exacerbates the inflow and infiltration.
yes,
And so a 3X kind of in the worst case scenario, potential additional treatment because there's not the 100% integrity. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your speech. Can you speak to the trend across the Commonwealth in terms of municipalities selling their treatment plants, and what are the drivers of that?
Yes, great question. So the question was, in Pennsylvania specifically, there's been observed trends of municipalities divesting either their water or their wastewater assets to an investor-owned utility like PA American or the York Water Company. Coming in, so before I got here, 6 months ago, I was in Illinois, and Pennsylvania has legislation in place that really facilitates regionalization and consolidation, that incents, if you will, provides incentives for some municipalities to take a look at this. And when I talked about that $235 million purchase price, all that's tied together by what's called fair market value legislation, which allows for different valuations of the systems that can be used for purchase prices. So that can be an incentive to the seller to take that revenue from the sale and put it into the needs of the community if they want to get out of the water or wastewater business. And then the investor-owned utility would then put that rate base forward in a rate case to kind of put that through all their rates. The trend has been, there's been more activity, M&A activity, if you will, in Pennsylvania than really most other states. Where I came from in Illinois, there was similar legislation. So this legislation exists all across the nation, different pockets, but it's got different specifics, if you will, and PA kind of led the way. But in Illinois, for example, there's a fair market value statute that allows similar acquisitions, and the M&A activity out there is increasing. It's just not as mature, I would say, as where Pennsylvania is. But it's definitely increasing. There's also increases in opposition to it as well in some parts of Pennsylvania, Southeast, particularly around Philadelphia. And the other piece and kind of incentives inside purchase price, though, is compliance. So PFAS, there's a lot of things that are getting out in the media these days, and a lot of municipalities are realizing that the compliance required investment is too much. And then also the operational expertise. When I talked about workforce, you got to have folks to run these things, and that's a challenge to find. I think I saw his hand first, and then I'll come forward. So the question was around contaminants to be concerned with. And, I look around the audience here, to some of my peers, there's a lot of chemicals out there. Okay. The EPA regulates a small fraction of them. It's certainly something that we have got to be focused on. And PFAS is something that I mentioned earlier, and that's one that's getting a lot of, I guess, exposure within the media, but that's a chemical, a man-made chemical that was widely used for all kinds of consumer products that make our life easier. So to answer your question, yes, I mean, there are things that we've got to continue to stay focused on. And that's why, in addition to the pumps and the pipes, we've got scientists that are researching these. We've got agencies like the American Water Association, Water Environment Federation and Foundation. All these folks are focused on it. But yes, I mean, that's a huge concern that we've got to continue to focus on. That said, we do a really, really good job of being proactive in our compliance above and beyond what the EPA mandates at this time. And an example, that's PFAS. Like, all of us have been working on PFAS before this federal rule has been proposed, which is, like I said, out in the news quite a bit now. Yes, sir.
Yes, it wasn't a surprise, I think, any of us, that one of the things we do in this country really well is we underprice the true cost of public service. And then you wake up with a hangover and see shocking news that we're a D or a D minus in this area of infrastructure. So you mentioned about full cost pricing. So if you were to take $1 as a baseline where we are today, what, in your opinion, would it take to close that gap? That dollar would need to be what? Way of pricing.
So the question was a comment, an acknowledgement of a disparity in really the pricing of water and wastewater, specifically between a municipality that has different, I'll call it, tools, even subsidies, things like that, to maybe not charge the full cost to the customer of that particular service. If they were to do all the maintenance, to not be a D minus. In addition, they can also maybe not take the steps to put the investment in to get it above a D minus and also subsidize. So there's a lot there. And the question was kind of, what does the investment need to look like? And while I don't have a dollar for York wastewater particular, there are things like that $17 million number I gave, and that's a fairly near-term commitment of ours. That's going to be ongoing, kind of talking about the dentist and going to regular checkups. But zooming out a little bit, some of the federal legislation that's been recently passed associated with kind of the pandemic, the IJA, ARPA, all the different federal pieces, they've committed, I think, $50 billion for water and wastewater infrastructure over maybe a 5-year period. American Water, looking at our forecast, $30 billion just from our company in 10 years. And that's for us to be taking that dollar number to make sure we're not a D minus and we're compliant. So extrapolate that for all the municipalities, all those other ones out there. And that $50 billion at the federal level is really a true drop in the bucket. But that shows you how far we have to go in awareness on the challenges around water and wastewater. I mean, the federal government, and it's better than nothing, of course, but they don't have a great understanding of the true need across the entire country. And it's so fragmented. If you look at electric utilities, there's like 5,000 of those. There was a huge consolidation in the mid-1900s. Water never did that. So every municipality has kind of been doing their own thing, and some of them do it really well. And then some have had some challenges. Long answer, but great comment, observation. Appreciate you bringing it up.
In Pennsylvania, what percentage of total wastewater is treated in investor-owned facility operations versus municipal? Let's take septic out of the picture. In terms of wastewater facility, how much is investor-owned versus municipal?
Very, very small amount. Yeah, so the question was percentage of Pennsylvania wastewater that's treated by investor-owned utilities like a PA American versus either a septic standalone system or a municipality. And it's a very, very small amount. So when I talk about fragmentation of water systems, wastewater is twice as bad. And so when I talk about we serve 20% of the state, that's 600,000 water connections. We have 98,000 wastewater. So it's very, very small. We're trying to grow that. And that's why one of the reasons why this acquisition was so important for us, because it really allowed us to kind of increase that scale within wastewater within Pennsylvania. It's a super small amount.
For that $8.5 billion investment cap, largely the fault of the municipality.
Yeah, when I say fault, I try and be really careful here because there are, at the end of the day, my hope, and I think I can speak for my peers, we want everybody in Pennsylvania to have clean water and clean wastewater services. And the key is just how you go about doing that. But yes, if you look purely statistical, a large part of that challenge has been borne by, I would say, deferred maintenance and things like that within the municipal sector. Doesn't mean that investor-owned utilities don't have their own challenges that we've got to work on, but we've got a blueprint for that characterized by those consent decrees and ongoing discussions with EPA. Thank you. Great.
Is the York plant still producing fertilizer pellets from the phosphates and nitrates?
Okay, so the question was, is the York wastewater treatment plant still producing fertilizer pellets as a byproduct? And the answer is no. All right. Yeah, no. These questions have been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm getting the hook. I really appreciate this opportunity and all of your attention and comments.
Justin, thank you so much. I was listening to all of this and I was thinking of Bill Carter, who many of you remember and loved, and his incredible passion for clean water and clean sanitation being available to every human being on the planet. I think about our Sandafa project that our committee is working so diligently on, raising tens of thousands of dollars to ensure that in one corner of the globe, far, far away from us, there is at least something resembling clean sanitation. We are so incredibly blessed, and we take it for granted every day when we casually flush our toilets and run our washing machines and just trust that all of it will magically happen. And so it was great to be reminded today of that blessing and to be reminded that we have great stewards in American Water and in York Water in our very own community, ensuring that that blessing continues here where we live. Our speaker today has signed the book plate in the book, The Bad Seed. Please make no connection here between anything. The Bad Seed by Jory John, which will be donated to the Smith STEAM Academy, along with a bookmark created by students at Creative York. Next week, we go back to higher education theme with Dr. Linda Fedrizzi Williams, who is the 10th president of Central Penn College. She will be discussing the post-pandemic landscape of higher education and the innovative ways Central Penn College is responding to assert its role in the region. We will hear how the college is serving underrepresented student populations in career-focused programs, from certificates and associate programs in the healthcare fields to bachelor's and master's degrees in business and leadership. Central Penn has been a leader in transformative programming that is designed to be responsive to local employers and student needs. Our closing quote for the day from J.K. Rowling: "We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better." Friends, imagine better and go do better. This meeting is adjourned.